was about phosphite tolerance in isolates of PC recovered from avocado orchards. Background to this is, well, phosphite's been used to control PC in orchards for probably, well, since probably about the mid-1980s. So that's around 35 odd years, often in really quite in large amounts, quite intensive, and typically you're looking at probably 3 to 8 applications a year, if not more. So there's a long, strong selective pressure on PC, which is almost pretty well ubiquitous in avo orchards, to develop resistance or tolerance to phosphite. Couple of problems with that: potential to become less effective. It's, well, the control measure for controlling PC in avocados. And the other one is more recently a bit of a problem or a concern with phosphite residues. Sorry.
No, I just realised that the virtual people can't see your presentation.
Okay. Phosphite residues in avocados, which might be a problem down the track. And this follows on from some work that was done by Mark Dobrowski about probably around 10 years ago, using lupin bait, a miniature whole plant system using lupins as the host. And he also sort of found a little bit of some evidence for phosphite resistance there.
Sorry.
In isolates from, or PC isolates from avocado. Continue.
I still can't see it. Okay.
Good. Might get this right. The approach we did, this is supposedly a nationwide project, so we got some isolates or material from Queensland, southeast Queensland and North Queensland, to get a range of isolates across the country. And we also collected over here from around down Pemberton as a control, isolates recovered from native vegetation around the same region as avocado orchards, often the native scrub. You see a sick podocarpus there that we got PC out of. Orchards that have had very low or no, in the middle there, applications of phosphite history. That's no application for about 20 years, and it shows it. And then on to other orchards where you've got a range of application regimes, ranging from sort of fairly indifferent, sporadic, up until very intensive phosphite applications. So we've got a range of isolates from places with different histories of phosphite application. We've probably got about a couple of hundred isolates from Queensland, a couple of hundred isolates from WA, and we started to try and screen them. The approach we tried to use a rather abbreviated form of Mark Dobrowski's method, using the old wretched lupins. His method probably lasts about 30 odd days to screen an isolate with that. We tried to get that down to about 10 days. Not particularly successful. Big variance in the levels of infections in roots. So big variances and no real statistical, difficult to get statistical differences between treated and untreated plants that we can compare. Resorted to the old method, looking at direct effects of phosphite on cinnamomi. In the top, I suppose it is your top left there, you see a sensitive isolate. On the left, that's without, this is on agar plate with no phosphite. On the right, that's about 150 milligrams per kilogram or milligrams per litre phosphite. So we worked out the EC50 values for that. We had a range of phosphite concentrations. And below that, you'll see an isolate that looks like it's pretty tolerant, okay? So that's at 150 milligrams per litre on the right there, and not much inhibition of growth there. So we had to resort to that, and that's unfortunate because that only looks at direct sort of toxicity of phosphite on PC, whereas the really important effect of phosphite as those indirect effects of switching on, affecting the metabolism of the pathogen and getting those effectors from the PC to switch on the plant host defence mechanisms. That's the really important one. So we've sort of had to cut out probably the important bit. So from that, we picked about 30 odd isolates, you know, across a range of sensitive ones to tolerant ones, and screened those using the whole plant in the glass house, lots and lots of plants, bag grown about 12-month-old, 18-month-old avo seedlings, foliar applications, approaching somewhat what levels that you would get in avocado orchards, not quite. And each isolate, we've got half our plants with phosphite and the pathogen, and the other ones without phosphite and the pathogen. And we're looking for, if there's no difference between the amount of root rot or root damage, then we can say that those, the isolate is more tolerant. So that was split in 2 phases. We screened about 30 odd isolates, that's about 600 plants. And then a third trial, a subset of that, as a repeat to validate what we'd done in the second trial. And these were only with WA isolates. We didn't want to have anything from Queensland slopping around on the floor around Murdoch. This is what you get with PC after about 3 months. This is the rating system we used. It's fairly crude, quite categorical system of rating. 0, obviously no sign of any root damage whatsoever. And the rest of it's in quartiles, you know, from about 1 to 25% root damage, 26 to 50, and so on. And the last category there, number 4, you can see what the kind of root damage that the thing can do in a fairly short time. This is some of the results from the first trial. This is not complete, and this data here is only for the plants not treated with phosphite. And the interesting bit is, if you look over there on the green bars, these are isolates that are recovered from native vegetation, okay, with probably no, well, definitely no, as far as we know, no phosphite, no contact with phosphite at all, and really quite low level of pathogenicity against avocado. And the other's a bit of a spread there. This is the root rot rating, and the rating's right up, you know, the ones that come from avocado, they're doing a lot of damage. So either the native ones aren't particularly pathogenic, or there could have been a shift like these ones that are with avocado, they're becoming more pathogenic towards their host, possibly. So down the track, we'll probably need to do, you know, try some of those avo isolates on native hosts and see where we go with that. And down the, yeah, same down the bottom with the fine root dry weights. Up above, that's sort of reflected in the fine root biomass as well, okay, with less damage or greater root biomass with the native isolates in general. Further on with the first trial, if you have a look at the central bar there, I haven't got a pointer here, have I can use? Sorry. Pointy thing. Yeah, the central bar here. Can everybody see that? No.
You'll be able to just use your mouse.
I'll use the mouse, right?
And everyone will be able to see.
No.
Is that working?
No.
Might be jam.
Anyway.
You can use this button to point at the screen.
Yeah, on there.
That, or you can point at that.
Okay. No. Is it sharp over there or not? On here, yeah. Look at here, this is the mean difference between the untreated and treated. And you can see that the mean down here, the treated plants, the fine root biomass is always greater, with one exception above the untreated plants. So in just about for every isolate except one, the treated plants, there was a phosphite response. Okay. The other important one is up here, the purple bars, the orchard with no treatments or no phosphite treatment for about 20 years. On the agar, they were supposedly not tolerant, they're sensitive to phosphite. And in actual fact, in the whole plant system with the root rating system, they're also not tolerant. And the others are a bit of a mixed bag. The second correction, it's not working.
The clicker isn't working?
No. Let's use that. Sorry.
Oh, with damned.
Damned. Good.
Okay.
This next slide, this is with the performance of the 10 the subset in the third trial. This is where we actually updated or increased the phosphite application rate right up to what you would get in an orchard situation at the best sort of highest rate that they would apply. This is probably up around about 115 milligrams per kilogram fresh weight of roots phosphite, which is pretty high, okay? And that's sort of approaching the equivalent with those plate tests as well. But we don't know exactly, well, in the root, we don't know whether the pathogen's actually going to get in contact with phosphite at that rate. That phosphite could be in the cytosol or in vacuoles or whatever, or bound up with other cellular components. But it's somewhere near it. In the second one, there's a little bit of a trend. Sorry. Bit of a trend. Some of the isolates. Okay, from those sites where we had sort of rather indifferent or sporadic phosphite treatments, which was consistent all the way through. In vitro, they're tolerant. In the first trial, they're tolerant. In the final experiment as well, the third trial, they also came through as tolerant. And the other one of interest here, again, the old orchard, the biodynamic orchard with probably greater than 20 years where it hasn't had any phosphite, sensitive isolates and consistent across the board. And some of the other ones, you've got inconsistencies where it's sensitive and then not sensitive. But there's a little bit of a trend there where at the end here, some of them were sort of tolerant, but these probably what was a lower rate in the plant. Sorry.
Love technology.
Yeah, I know, but I'm useless too.
Doing great. Spoiler alert.
Good. No, anyway. Okay, so there's a slight trend with some of them. They're tolerant in the first, or correction, trial 2, but they turn out they're rated as sensitive in the third trial. But remembering at the third trial that we actually did probably update up the amount of phosphite in the roots. Yeah, where are we? Correction. Yep, that's it. No. Okay, so the conclusion that we've got pretty strong evidence that we've got tolerance in some isolates of PC. And tolerance, yeah, differences between a few of the sites there on their phosphite application histories. It might be related to phosphite application history. the questions and comments, big question. Yeah, how extensive is this tolerance to phosphite in populations of PC, and at what kind of scale? Okay, around individual trees, within particular orchards, and probably at a regional scale as well. Yeah, is it really important? Are these things really, yeah, how well do these ones compete with the general, within the general population of PC? The other one, potential effects on natural ecosystems. You know, these, will these be a problem if they get out from orchards? And a lot of these places they are. They join directly onto native bushland, escapes from there. Or whether they're really quite, you know, they've got a fairly, they're in a pampered sort of situation there. They get lots of water. They're loaded up with phosphite, but they might be tolerant to that. But, you know, they've probably evolved in other ways that may make them, you know, less fit to survive out in the shrubberies anyway. And the third one, the big B word, biosecurity, at the local, sort of regional and national scale, you know, some of these things, did they actually, did we get phosphite tolerant isolates or populations of things introduced on planting stock? Remembering even now, there's a fair bit of material is brought in from over east for some of these more recent plantings of this thing, you know, avocado. Or is it, yeah, more likely it's just evolved under the pretty strong selective pressures here? But the big thing that they probably haven't paid much attention to at the local level, there's been about a 7-fold expansion in orchards. But why would you move stuff around on your own property or from property to property that's had 30 years, you know, it's already developed phosphite tolerance? Why reintroduce that into your new plantation? So I think that's one thing that might have been overlooked, and they probably need to pay more attention to. And that's, yeah, there's other questions as well. Probably the other one, we still need to develop a fairly quick whole system screening method. Yeah, the one we have at the moment has got a few problems with it. And that's something else that we need to work on if we're going to sort of follow this in the future. And that's it. Thanks.
Have we got a question for Bill? I'll get David to read out the one at the back, and then we can get the microphone down here to Brett.
Yep, so we've got one question online from David again. He asks, what was your threshold for tolerance in Victoria and in Hunter?
Tolerance. Well, we had a whole group of probably fairly sensitive ones down around, yeah, sorry, fairly sensitive ones that were, I think from memory, around about, EC50 was down around probably 20, maybe 30 milligrams per litre, that kind of concentration. And then we had a group in the middle that was middling group, probably around, probably up to about 80, I think. And then we had a whole heap, EC50 was way over 150. So they're, yeah, anything, and there's quite a lot of those that were at that sort of level. The EC50 was greater than 150 milligrams per litre. Does that answer the question? Or?
It's from a virtual person, so he was just reading it out on their behalf.
Sorry.
No. And then one from Brett.
Just a question out of interest. Would you know what the average orchard spending on phosphite treatments per year, and is the industry looking at any, I suppose, varieties that are more tolerant or developing tolerance?
Well, yeah. Well, just from personal experience and from what I've seen thus far, you've got, and well, this is my comment on this. There are a few more resistant rootstocks that don't seem to have been adopted widely. One of them, I think it's got PBR sort of thing, so there's probably expense with that. That's part of it. But these things have been known for some time. There's like Juicer and then Velvet, they're the more resistant rootstocks. I don't think they affect actual above, you know, fruit productivity. I think they're still pretty good. Part of the problem is there's been a really quite rapid expansion, and they just haven't had the amount of seed from the material from the resistant rootstocks to be able to do it. And I think there's a general attitude that phosphite works.
Is it cheap and easy?
It's easy, but probably not particularly cheap. But when you're getting 25 tonnes per hectare, and you look at the price of avocados, then who cares, sort of thing. But okay, yeah, but no, the resistant rootstock, that's really that's something they need to work on. And like the other one, some of these they look like they're really in planter, really quite tolerant. Where was I going with this? Yeah, just movement of these wretched tolerant things. That why introduce a problem when you don't have to? Okay.